Welcome to another edition of the Magic Latest Podcast where we discuss everything Orlando Magic basketball. I'm your host, Jalon Dixon, and today we've got a couple of points to get into, but before we get started, remember to like, comment, and subscribe for daily Orlando Magic content. We are on the road to 1,000 subscribers and trying to become one of the biggest podcasts on the platform when it comes to covering the squad. With that all being said, let's go ahead and get right into today's episode. Starting off with Jamahl Mosley, who entering the 2025 season seems to have a lot of pressure on him from the national media, as now they believe he is the leading candidate for the Coach of the Year award going into next season. It was a recent ESPN poll for all of the major NBA awards that was conducted within the last week, and Jamahl Mosley resoundingly led all candidates in terms of votes to win the Coach of the Year award in the preseason, being 48 points, with the second closest coach being Atlanta Hawks coach Quinn Snyder with 24. To round out that top five, Ime Udoka of the Houston Rockets with 22, Mike Brown of the New York Knicks with 21, and Mitch Johnson of the San Antonio Spurs with 16. Young Masuk of ESPN also emphasized the transition from Jamahl Mosley simply being a developmental coach to now coaching for this team to be a real contender in the Eastern Conference, saying Jamahl Mosley was tasked with developing the Magic when he was hired in 2021, and he got a young core to 2 straight playoff appearances, but now Mosley has a roster built to make a run at winning the injury weekend East. And our panel is betting Mosley will captain a significant leap forward and take home Coach of the Year honors. If the seat is not hot for Coach Mosley, I would say it is at least warm. I believe that things like this are an indication that the actual expectations, not only of the national media, but I would say even in the front office, are that this team has to get out of the first round. This team has to take a step forward this season. You trade significant draft capital for Desmond Bane. You revamp the coaching staff this summer by making acquisitions like bringing in God Shamgod. You bring in a veteran presence at point guard for like Tyus Jones to filter out the fact that there's a lot of injury concerns around Jalen Suggs. And you've positioned yourself with 2 all-star caliber forwards in Paulo Banchero and Franz Wagner to be a real menace in the Eastern Conference. Jamahl Mosley has hit his head on the first round, and although they have had some unfortunate circumstances in both instances, this is a season where I believe that if Jamahl Mosley does not get past the first round, if this Orlando Magic team does not get past the first round, he will be viewed in a different light amongst Orlando Magic brass. Because there's not too many more moves the Orlando Magic can actually do from a roster construction standpoint. You guys are joking with me in the comment section all the time about the fake trades. I actually Googled some fake trades today, and people are running out of fake trades for the Orlando Magic because financially they are in a position where they can only make but so many moves, if any at all, with the current cap structure that they have. So this is a team that can't do too much more. So the coaching aspect is going to be so important for this team. Jamahl Mosley is in a very, very interesting situation, and he is in a spot where this season's success could be a defining moment for his long-term job security. Because the Eastern Conference has never been more wide open, and this might actually be the Orlando Magic's best shot to win a championship, or at least reach the Eastern Conference Finals. And I hate to say that given the talent that we have at forward, but just given the landscape, the actual pathway, the road to an NBA Finals has never been more wide open than this year. Never been more wide open than this season. So the improvement within this season is so important, because it's like if you don't get past the first round in a year where teams like Indiana are not as good as they were before, Boston is hampered, Milwaukee is trying to figure themselves out, Philly is a team that we still don't really know a lot about, right? If you can't get to the Eastern Conference Finals in this universe of what things look like, when all those teams start to figure themselves back out, or they start to get their guys back, where do you rank in the bigger picture of that? If you're not at least an Eastern Conference Finals team before all of that, your pathway with all of them back in the mix becomes that much thinner and puts you in position where you're not nearly considered as the kind of contender that you should for a squad that is this talented. So Jamal Mosley is in a really interesting situation because it might be the first. This might be the first year that we're having a real conversation about Mosley coaching for his job. And again, I don't think he's on the hot seat right now, but the results of this season could be really, really impactful on his long-term tenure with the Orlando Magic. Next up, happy birthday to Franz Wagner, or happy belated birthday to Franz Wagner. Turned 24 years old and got their first big dub in Eurobasket, talking about the Germany team, where they took on Montenegro and won 106-76. Franz Wagner dropped 22, 8, 1 assist, 2 steals, had himself a good, solid game, and a guy that I think is going to be really important. Something he said about that game was we actually played pretty good offense in the first half, got some good shots but didn't make them. But defensively was room to improve, and that's what we did in the second half. Then we kind of played our pace and got a deserving win. Man, I think that Franz Wagner's on-ball ability in this game and on-ball ability throughout the beginning of Eurobasket in general shows that he's going to be a legitimate point forward. I would not be surprised if there were situations where for 4 and 5 minute stretches of games next season that Franz Wagner is playing the point guard position next to Desmond Bane in the backcourt. We got somebody like Tristan da Silva on the floor, Paulo Banchero, and Wendell Carter. I would not be surprised if there are situations where Franz Wagner is the lead ball handler, lead initiator, bringing the ball up the floor as the point guard for a handful of minutes here and there in games. This is a guy who I think is slowly but surely opening his game up even more as a decision maker. Even though the assists weren't there, as he mentioned, there were a lot of situations where the shot just was not falling in the first half for them. But actually, Franz Wagner was making things happen, opening the floor up with his driving ability. A guy that got to the free throw line 9 times in this game. Franz Wagner, again, I said this beforehand, man. Between him and Paulo Banchero, they're going to average 7, 8, 9 free throw attempts a game, and you're averaging nearly 20 free throw attempts per game from just your front court duo alone next season. This team's offensive rating is going to increase dramatically just by the fact that they're going to be more efficient as a scoring group. And by them getting to the free throw line so much, it's going to force teams to have to collapse on the paint, and that creates three-point opportunities for guys like Desmond Bane, like Jalen Suggs, like Jace Richardson, like Tristan da Silva, so on and so forth. That creates an offense where now you have to respect those two guys as drivers that much more, because you have to think about the possibility of fouling them as well. And it also draws so much attention that it creates its own version of floor spacing where now the guys that are respected shooters, it's a pick your poison. Are you going to let these guys get to the free throw line? You're going to let these guys walk themselves into 7, 8, 9 free throw attempts per game as a duo? Or are you going to get completely shot out the gym by some of the knockdown three-point shooters that the Orlando Magic have across that backcourt? Franz Wagner, I think, is going to be a really, really solid player for this upcoming season. I think when you look at him in the grand scheme of things, he's a player that I think is going to jump into that all-star conversation. I feel like he's going to make his first all-star game this year, and he's going to be discussed in a much more open light than he has in the past amongst some of his peers. I was looking at those NBA 2K ratings because, we did that episode the other day talking about Paulo Banchero. Franz Wagner, amongst 25 and under players, was ranked 15th in terms of overall behind players like Tyrese Maxey. I think when you look at the landscape of the league and you look at what Franz Wagner can do as a two-way player, I think that Franz Wagner is genuinely a top 10 player in his age range. Again, 25 and under, I think Franz Wagner is a top 10 player, borderline top 10 player. At worst, he's 11, I feel like. And the reason why I say that is because the two-way ability that he has, paired with the fact that he has positional versatility to be your lead point guard at that size, but also have the ability from a Burley perspective defensively to guard threes and small ball fours. He's a guy that I think has a ton of versatility, where if we're having conversations about guys like Scotty Barnes being, in that echelon of like top 5, top 7 players at his age range, then I think that guys like Franz Wagner should also be in a similar conversation, and that's amongst at least the top 10. Shout out to Franz Wagner again. Happy belated birthday to you, and a guy that I think is going to have a very, very special season. A dude who I think has already been special so far this summer and has a chance to really build on that going into the regular season. Next, let's go into ESPN's contender rankings, where the Orlando Magic were the third ranked contender in the Eastern Conference. You can probably guess behind who. He was the Orlando Magic were also amongst 11 total contending teams in across the NBA. Of course, the main ones for the Eastern Conference: Knicks, Cavaliers, Orlando, and actually the Hawks and the Detroit Pistons were both included in that tier list as well. And then when it comes to the Western Conference, that group was a lot more interesting. That one had, of course, Denver Nuggets, Oklahoma City Thunder, Minnesota Timberwolves, LA Clippers, LA Lakers, and I believe they also had the Houston Rockets. That was the six. So very interesting group, very good company, and I would say that in that grouping, again, similar to what we discussed in the power rankings the other day, that team is considered a top 8, top 9 team in the NBA right now. ESPN is showing some love, though. ESPN is showing some love. Now, interestingly enough, again, having the Hawks and the Pistons in that top contender tier in the Eastern Conference, again, those are going to be two teams that come up a lot when we're talking about the Orlando Magic, because across national media, again, it's been pretty definitively decided. The Cavaliers and the Knicks are the two best teams in the Eastern Conference. Whether we believe that or not is not up to us. But the Knicks and the Cavaliers have been definitively defined as the two top teams in the Eastern Conference. Outside of that ranking we read the other day, where the second best team in that ranking actually was the Orlando Magic. That fight for who the third best team in the Eastern Conference is really the Orlando Magic's to lose, because they've been comfortably sat there pretty much this entire summer. But those two teams, Atlanta, who adds Nickeil Alexander-Walker, adds Kristaps Porzingis, goes into a second full year with Dyson Daniels. Hopefully we'll get a year, hopefully for their sake, gets a year healthy with Jalon Johnson. They're going to be in that conversation. The Detroit Pistons, with another year of Cade Cunningham in this position, with real veteran talent around him, right? Another year with Ausar Thompson on the roster, Ron Holland, Jalen Duren, a healthy season from Jaden Ivey. They're going to be in this conversation. It's gonna be up to the Orlando Magic to stave off these two squads, because these two teams, who they're gonna see a lot during the regular season, these two teams are gonna be the two squads that get talked about the most in this group. Despite all five of these teams being in the contender tier, going into the season, there's a tier break after the top two teams, and these three teams are in it. Orlando, Atlanta, Detroit are in that tier break. And the team that comes out of that group, the best, is the team that will elevate themselves into the right conversation when we're talking about winning a championship, which is that tier with the Cleveland Cavaliers and the New York Knicks. I think that Orlando already is the second best team at bare minimum in the Eastern Conference. But I think until they stave off those other two teams, especially given the national television game situation with them last year, not performing well against high-level opponents on a big stage, this is a team that has to prove it first, and I'm willing to concede that that's something that has to take place. So with that being the case, I think that ESPN was fair. And I think that at the same time, this is a team that I feel like, again, calmly has been placed as the third best team in the Eastern Conference all summer long. And I think it's going to take the first 2 months, 3 months for believers to really jump on that bandwagon for this team being considered as a real contender to not just make the playoffs and get out of the first round, but make a significant run in the Eastern Conference playoffs. Last but not least, let's finish off with the question of the day. And today's question of the day is actually nothing super, super crazy. Just thought it was pretty interesting, just given the landscape of things. Question of the day is, where do you believe that Paulo Banchero and Franz Wagner rank as a duo in going into the 2025-2026 season? I thought this was interesting just because, again, going back to those tier lists, I was looking at those tier lists, especially for the contenders particularly, and just thinking about the talent aspect across the board for those teams, right? You look at the Cleveland Cavaliers. Their duo is probably like Donovan Mitchell and Evan Mobley. Or you look at the New York Knicks, obviously we know that's Jalen Brunson and Karl Anthony Towns. Atlanta, that's probably, realistically now, you would make the argument that that's Trae Young and Kristaps Porzingis. You could say that's Trae Young and Jalen Johnson. Depends on how you feel about that. Detroit comfortably feels like it's Cade Cunningham and Jaden Ivey when healthy. Minnesota, we know that that's Anthony Edwards with Julius Randle. We know the Lakers, that's LeBron James and Luka Doncic. Houston, probably Kevin Durant and like Alperen Şengün, or Kevin Durant and Amen Thompson. Depends on where you stand on that. The Clippers, we know obviously that that's James Harden and Kawhi Leonard. Am I missing anybody? No, I don't think so. But you go across that entire grouping and you ask yourself, like, are the Magic like low key? Like, do the Magic low key have like a top 7 duo in the league right now with Paulo and Franz? Because I think you can make a legitimate argument for it. I feel like you can make a legitimate argument that they're borderline on the edge of like somewhere between like 5 and 8. Probably closer to the middle of that, which is why I said the sweet spot is like 7. But I think out of every duo that I named, I think they're better than Atlanta's duo. I think they're better than Detroit's duo. I think they're on par with New York and Cleveland. I mean, New York and Cleveland. Anthony Edwards and Julius Randle, I would say, are a little bit better right now. Both All NBA players. Both have made All NBA teams. Anthony Edwards and Julius Randle, I believe, have also. Well, I think Julius Randle's made a second team All NBA. I think Anthony Edwards has been first team All NBA before. Luka, LeBron, that one's a little bit different nowadays because LeBron is like 40, about to be like 40, 41 years old. I think we're better than the Clippers duo pretty calmly. I think that we're on par, if not a smidget better than the Kevin Durant, Alperen Şengün pairing. I think that depends on just how much Alperen Şengün can step into a lead offensive creator role now that they're kind of like, in a sense, giving him the keys to play through him more often offensively. Denver's duo with Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray. I feel pretty comfortable in that one as well because I feel like Nikola Jokic is just like hard carrying that duo. But if we're talking about duos, I feel like on par. You guys let me know in the comment section down below though, man. I think that duo conversation is actually a pretty interesting one because I think that the Orlando Magic are somewhere around like, the best case scenario is 5. I think worst case scenario is like 8. I think a sweet spot for them is like the 7th spot, but I'm interested to hear what you guys say in the comment section down below. Nonetheless, that has been another edition of the Magic Latest Podcast. I will see you guys again for tomorrow's episode. Again, remember to like, comment, and subscribe. But until then, peace.